Before Good Times, The Jeffersons, The Wire, and The Corner, there was a daring experiment in television called Bird of the Iron Feather, and it actually happened in 1970. That's right, nearly 40 years ago. We discussed its significance and the impact it had in this episode of The Professors.
From across the city and the 7 city colleges of Chicago, broadcasting from 63rd and Halsted at Kennedy King College. Professors take the art of conversation to a higher degree.
The title, The Bird of the Iron Feather, comes from a speech by famed slave abolitionist Frederick Douglass, which describes his race as having been not, quote, a bird for the hunter's gun, but a bird of iron feathers, unable to fly to freedom, unquote. Bird of the Iron Feather was the highest rated local production in public broadcasting history. It was a true soul drama for its time. It depicted real people of color and the many challenges that they faced. I'm Max Galeas, and joining us today on The Professors are Bird of the Iron Feathers director, Coral Johnson, and actor, Harold Lee Rush. And to discuss the impact of the influence it had on television today is media professor Temple Hemphill from Kennedy King College. Welcome, all of you. It's an honor having all of you here, by the way.
Thank you.
I want to start off with you, Harold. The significance of this program. Why are we celebrating it today? Why should we be celebrating it more?
Well, let me take you back just for a minute to that period of time, 1969, 1970. That we were coming out of a tremendous decade. We had seen the assassination of President Kennedy, Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, and here in Chicago, Fred Hampton. It was a period of transition from the Civil Rights Movement to the Black Power movement. It was the anti-war movement. We had the Democratic National Convention here in '68. So you had all these different forces, all these different energies, and Chicago was knee-deep in this. And Bird of the Iron Feather represented, at least for me, I was 19 years old, and it was my first television experience, and it was an opportunity for me, as well as a lot of other artists here in Chicago. But more importantly, it was a time that I saw and was a part of the Black community uniting to do something really significant in terms of the media.
And the opportunity for this, Coral Johnson, was not there for the asking. It had to be seized, did it not? It's a very interesting history to this program as to how it got started.
Well, there were absolutely no Black television, no Black people in television in front of the camera or behind in 1969. Bird of the Iron Feather was first produced in 1969 by WTTW. They received $600,000 to produce a Black soap opera.
From the Ford Foundation.
From the Ford Foundation to produce a Black soap opera. Well, they were first conceived of having 2 white directors, and everyone else on the show was white. The Coalition for United Community Action that was headed by Reverend C.T. Vivian found out about this program being designed. So did Richard Durham, who at that time was the editor of the Chicago Defender and the Muslims paper. So Richard Durham told me that this was going to happen. I was a regular drama director, and he told me this was going to happen. And he also mentioned that there were no Black directors in Chicago. Yeah. So there was a program at WGBH in Boston that were teaching Black directors. And he suggested that I go, and I went there, and there was a 6-week training program, and I got a certificate. I came back to TTW, and I told him I would like to. Richard Durham said, "Don't go in there asking for a director. Go in as an actor." So I went and auditioned as an actor, and they grabbed me up. They, "Oh yeah, you're great, wonderful." I said, "But I'm not here to be an actor. I have a certificate of a director, and that's what I'm looking for." "Oh no, we have our two directors. We have directors." And
writers too, which were supposed to be white students.
The writers were to be white students.
Yeah, white directors, white students for what is at the time was going to be called a Black soap opera, right?
Written by white students.
And when this got out, and you were kept from actually being part of the show at all, much less the vision for creating the show. What then happened?
Well, Richard Durham said there was more drama behind the scene than was on the show. What happened? We started negotiating. We negotiated for months about how this program was doing. We got Richard Durham in, we got some of the black music in, we got, now, the Ready for the Black Director, they finally negotiated for me to be the black director after months. And so I was to sign the contract.
All this time you could be creating scripts, doing the
Right.
work for actually producing, getting ready for the show. Instead, you have to just wrangle and negotiate to be able to even get to the opportunity itself.
I was to
But
sign
it took
a-
something much more dramatic than that, right? To actually get WTGW to not only hear you, but to listen, but also to hear.
Yes,
What did you then? What ended up? Not you
coalition.
personally, but the coalition. It was a coalition. It was
Well,
a
the
community.
coalition was working with the Blackstone Rangers at
Led
the
by the
time
Blackstone Rangers at
on,
the
on
time.
construction downtown.
Yeah.
And so they thought of the idea of you bringing the Blackstone Rangers out to WTTW doing negotiations.
And suddenly it changed.
And we went out there and closed down the station,
wow.
locked the doors, and pulled all the things from the telephone, and said, "Now let's negotiate."
and then at that time, then the negotiations occur, and then you have suddenly. Well, I mean, part of as I understand it, part of the expectation was that there would be a whole cast list of talent that would be signed on to do the show, including Harold Rush himself.
But they asked me, they asked us, "What do you want?" And we had a list of 11 things that we wanted.
Yeah.
And my name was on top as the black director.
as the director.
Right.
Still at that time, the popular television today is very different than what Bird of the Iron Feather actually represents historically.
In terms of behind the scenes folks?
We're in the context here of the behind the scenes. We haven't even gotten to the show itself yet,
Right,
which is
right.
extraordinary, including Emmy Award winning. So before we get to the show itself, a little bit more on the differences here between what occurred at that time and what really those filters are like now.
Right now. As you all talked about earlier, we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of the show airing. And yet we have one African American producer in entertainment in terms of television. Grey's Anatomy's a producer, a female African American woman. And I think that's amazing. I think that we should have more numbers. Now we have Lee Daniels, who he's garnered more success because of Precious. He directed Precious. But
Which just came out 5 months ago to
Right.
great critical acclaim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even Lee, I write for Streetwise, and I interviewed him a few months ago at the premiere of Precious here in Chicago. And he talked about when he tried to produce, he was originally the producer on board for the for Brokeback Mountain, but he didn't have enough juice, so to speak, to get it produced.
Juice meaning the
Notoriety, the
notoriety,
name
name
recognition,
recognition,
at that time. So what we were talking about in the green room, all of us, we need more minorities we talked about responsibility of minorities. Now that Lee Daniels has garnered more success with Precious, where's that responsibility? And I think Lee mentioned, he's not sure if, Harold mentioned if you are not sure of the responsibility of, or if Lee thinks he should have a responsibility. Is there a responsibility in terms of gatekeeping, in terms of minorities who are behind the scenes?
Well, here's the example of where the gates are being crashed down, right? As a first opportunity,
Right.
it was necessary to just knock the gates over and bring the Blackstone Rangers along is a very powerful force of negotiation.